Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Village Board for December 2nd, 2019. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Simpson, roll call, please.
Trustee Lang.
Here.
Trustee Vito.
Here.
Trustee Rufato.
Here.
Trustee Vogel.
Here.
Trustee Papantos. Present. Trustee Kruger.
Present.
President Horker.
Here. You have before you the minutes of the workshop meeting of November 2nd, 2019. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Motion, Trustee Papantos.
Second.
Second, Trustee Rufato. Roll call.
Papantos, Rufato. Trustee Lang.
Yes.
Trustee Vito.
Yes.
Trustee Rufato.
Yes.
Trustee Vogel.
Yes.
Trustee Papantos.
Yes.
Trustee Kruger.
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes, you also have before you the minutes of the regular meeting for November 4th, 2019. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Trustee Vogel. Second, Trustee Papantos. Roll call.
Trustee Lang.
Yes.
Trustee Vito.
Yes.
Trustee Rufato.
Yes.
Trustee Vogel.
Yes.
Trustee Papantos. Yes. Trustee Kruger.
Yes.
President Horker.
Do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes this evening.
Excellent. Proclamations. Clerk Simpson.
National Drug and Drunk Driving Prevention Month, December 2019. Alcohol impaired driving crashes resulted in 10,511 deaths nationally during 2018. 27,046 drivers were arrested for driving under the influence in Illinois in 2018. The December holiday season is traditionally one of the most deadly times of the year for impaired driving. For thousands of families across the state and the nation, holidays are a time to remember loved ones lost. Organizations across the state and the nation are joined with the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over and other campaigns that foster public awareness of the dangers of impaired driving and anti-impaired driving law enforcement efforts. The Village of Wheeling is proud to partner with the Illinois Department of Transportation's Division of Traffic Safety and other traffic safety groups in that effort to make our roads and streets safer. Patrick Horker, President of the Village of Wheeling, does hereby proclaim December 2019 as Drunk and Drug Driving Prevention Month in the Village of Wheeling, and hereby calls upon all citizens, government agencies, business leaders, hospitals and healthcare providers, schools and public and private institutions to promote awareness of the impaired driving problem, to support programs and policies to reduce the incidence of impaired driving, and to promote safer and healthier behaviors regarding the use of alcohol and other drugs this December holiday season and throughout the year.
Thank you, Clerk Simpson. That brings us to citizens' concerns and comments.
Members of the public may address the board with comments regarding only those items that are relevant to village business. No citizen shall speak for more than 5 minutes without consent of the board. Members of the general public who wish to address the board must sign the request to speak form prior to the commencement of the public meeting. Mr. Mark.
Just as a reminder to everyone, this is a time for citizens to make comments and express their concerns and for the board to listen. Neither the board nor staff will be answering questions. Please come forward.
I understand. Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Robert Mark. I'm the treasurer of the Chicago Executive Pilots Association at the airport, SEPA. And I'm here tonight with a number of other SEPA members and also some airport users. SEPA represents the small aircraft, the general aviation pilots, that operate about 2/3 of the aircraft that are based at the airport, and annually they deliver about 20% of the total hangar revenue dollars. So here tonight, I'm planning on talking about the airport's master plan that I know is on the agenda for later tonight, and that you're going to be asked to approve pretty soon. One element of it is it calls for closing of runway 624 to make room for additional airport development. SEPA believes closing that runway is a very bad idea, and I'd like to offer you a few thoughts about that for you to think about before you approve anything. One of those problems is that this is not the first time that the airport has tried to close runway 624. This very board, well, not you people, but in the past, this board has voted against closing that runway in 2007, actually, citing safety issues. So to us, if you thought it was a bad idea then, we'd kind of like to know what's changed. Now, myself, I've been flying a variety of airplanes from that airport since 1973, including a number of the corporate jets. I've also been teaching people to fly there for 40 years. And I also managed to spend 5 years as a tower controller at Milwaukee. So I think that gives me kind of a unique perspective on how runway 624 is used. As a flight instructor, though, I teach people how to operate aircraft safely. That's our goal. But that also means I have to teach them how to be good risk managers. An important risk factor for pilots these days is how to choose the best runway for takeoff and landing. If I can get just a little technical for a minute, airplanes operate best when they take off and land directly into the wind. Of course, sometimes, as we all know, that's not possible, and when the winds blow across the runway, that's a crosswind. In fact, we call that a crosswind in pilot lingo. So when those winds are really strong, though, controlling the aircraft itself can be difficult. It's just simply based on the physics of mass. Maybe a better way to visualize the problem we're trying to communicate is that imagine yourself in rough seas, even a sea of air. It's the same thing. Would you rather be in a tiny canoe or would you rather be sitting on top of an aircraft carrier? Again, it's about mass. And large airplanes are not immune to strong crosswinds, not by any means. In 1996, the Gulfstream jet tried to depart Milwaukee's runway 34, fighting a very strong crosswind. They didn't make it, and we know they ended up just short of the Foxborough apartment complex. And that accident killed 4 people because the pilots failed to accurately assess the risk that they were facing by choosing the runway that they did when other options existed. So to pilots, crosswinds are nothing to screw around with. But back to runway 624, which is our crosswind runway. And it's, to us, one of our greatest safety assets when the wind is howling out of the west like it was just last week. On Wednesday or Thursday, the winds were 45 miles an hour straight out of the southwest. And actually, runway 624, the one they want to close, was the only operational runway that day. Now, sure, we don't use this runway a whole lot, but when we do, we're kind of glad it's there. It's like airbags in your car. You pay for them, you maintain them, hoping you're never going to use them, but boy, if you need them, you're glad they're there. Now, without getting too technical again, we believe the wind studies that the airport used to prove their case for closing the runway are flawed. We dug deeply into the very same data the airport did, and we arrived at some different conclusions. Now, the airport's master plan is also based on construction demands, except there's very little demand for new hangars at the airport. The airport has grand plans, of course, but so far, few takers. So SEPA believes there's plenty of available land on the airport to support future building without closing runway 624, like that lot on Milwaukee Avenue just as you turn into Signature. It's had a for sale sign on it for as long as I can remember, but no takers. There are more than a dozen other plots of land on the airport that could be used. So before the airport's master plan and layout plan are approved by you, we hope that you'll consider keeping 624 open at least until the airport has used up all of its available land and to not close the runway as the first element of that plan. So once you allow them to destroy runway 624, there'll be no going back, and the pilots are going to face some serious increased risks.
Sir, that's time.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Very good.
Mr. Riemann? Reamer?
Yes, I'm Wayne Raymer. I've lived in Wheeling for over 50 years, and I worked in Wheeling for 32 years, which means, of course, I've always felt that a decent place to live and a decent place to work. And at least part of the decency is because of good decisions from our decent leaders. The last time I was here was about 20 years ago when the board honored one of my sons and his group in the Wheeling robotics team when they achieved national recognition. And that was indeed a decent moment. It was a pride for the village and for all the kids who are participating in that. And I would venture to say that many of those young people from that time are very are doing very well in life right now. But I'd just like to say that I feel that the having cannabis dispensaries in this village does not add anything positive to it. I see no positive except for monetary gain, and if that is your reason for voting for it, I would ask for you just to find some other revenue sources. In my opinion, and I don't want to go into details of pros and cons, but really having these dispensaries in the village adds nothing to it. And in fact, it could very well subtract from the decency of the community and the decency of the people. So I would just like for you to, tonight or whenever you vote on this issue, to consider the decency of this community and of individual citizens. And no matter what the state has done or what revenue sources you may find, I would encourage you to vote against having cannabis dispensaries in this village.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Yeaman?
Good evening. While ago, our town changed rule about storing RV on driveway, and it was for good. But unfortunately, this small mistake was granted 4 times per year. This rule limited RV owner for 2 trips per year, 7 days before first trip, 7 days after this trip, 7 days before second trip, 7 days after second trip. I know some of you have feeling RV is something huge, but I make a few pictures, and I would like to show to all of you just to understand. Just to understand what the size of RV and what the size of regular commercial truck.
Sir, you can just pass them around, but we can't always hear you unless you're talking into the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, these 2 pictures just to show what is size of small motorhome and size of commercial truck, what we have almost on every second driveway in our town. Our neighboring towns have much more flexible rules. For example, Northbrook allowed parking RV on driveway on the single-family house for year-round, as long as it doesn't obstruct sidewalk. Buffalo Grove from spring to autumn. After 30 years as a resident of the Wheeling, I figure out our town is better than other neighboring town. Our school is not worse than other. Our government more productive. And I can see this, how the town changed during the last 30 years. I hope you will adopt new proposal. Thank you very much, and if you have any question, I'm ready to answer.
Thank you, sir.
This proposal, what I wrote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Staff reports. Director Huizar.
Good evening. I would just like to take an opportunity to thank the Spears Restaurant and several trustees that volunteered this over the Thanksgiving holiday to provide a wonderful lunch. This is the 5th year that Spears has opened its doors to the less fortunate on Thanksgiving Day to provide a lovely lunch. We had around 100 people there this Thanksgiving, and Spears has been nothing but supportive throughout the year, so we want to thank them for that.
Thank you, Ms. Huizar. Chief Dunn.
Good evening. Just making a request that if anybody would like to participate and contribute to the annual Toys for Tots collection, the Wheeling Police Department is a collection point. We're partnering with the United States Marines, and we'll take donations up to December 8th to get it to them. And also, we do have our annual Shop with the Cop coming up in the near future, and if anybody wishes to donate to that, you can make your donation to the Wheeling Helping Hands or to the Wheeling Police Benevolent Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Janik.
Thank you. A couple words about winter weather. It is winter now. We've had several inches of snow so far. Just want to remind everybody of a few items. There are a number of informational items on the website and in the newsletter that you can review this on. But just please take care in the winter relative to our snow plows. They do have flashing lights on them. They do have big plows on them, and usually 1 or 2 times a year, people will actually run into our trucks, and I don't want anybody to get hurt. Also, when you're plowing or shoveling snow, try to locate snow on the left-hand side of your driveway as you're looking at it, not the right-hand side. A lot of times our plow trucks come down, people pile snow on the right-hand side of their driveway, and then the snow gets pushed into their driveway, and they're not very happy about it because they just finished shoveling some snow. So try to put the snow on the left-hand side of your driveway. There is a visual on the website you can take a look at. When it does get much colder out, please beware of your water lines. Try to keep them from not freezing by reducing any drafts, maybe putting some insulation around those pipes that are near outside doors or outside walls that don't have much insulation. And there are some other items on the website relative to disposal of holiday lights and trees as well, Christmas trees. So any questions, you can always call Public Works. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, guys. Clerk Simpson, consent agenda.
Consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered after all agenda items. 11A, resolution approving a third one-year renewal contract with Clean Cut Tree Service Incorporated for creek tree trimming, removal, and brush clearing in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for 2020. 11B, resolution approving a third renewal contract with Advanced Tree Care for tree trimming and removal and stump grinding in an amount not to exceed $100,000 in 2020. Item 11C, resolution approving an easement agreement with Community Consolidated School District 21 to allow for the installation of the Eastchester Relief Storm Sewer. 11D, resolution authorizing the village president clerk to execute an agreement with GovTemp USA LLC for temporary professional staffing services in an amount not to exceed $40,000. 11E, resolution authorizing the village manager to execute an agreement for contractual administrative hearing officer services with Victor E. Puskas Jr. Item 11F, resolution accepting a proposal for liability insurance coverage from Arthur J. Gallagher Risk Management Services Incorporated and insurance consulting services from Nugent Risk Management Services. 11G, ordinance amending Chapter 1.26 of the Wheeling Municipal Code regarding village fees and charges. 11H, resolution approving a contract with Core and Main to upgrade existing census software and enter into a 5-year service agreement to provide hosting support services for the census water meter software systems for a total cost of $110,570.
Thank you, Clerk Simpson. Does anyone have any concerns or comments? If there are none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Trustee Pantos, second, Trustee Vogel. Clerk Simpson, roll call, please.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
Trustee Rafato,
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos,
Yes.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes. 13.
13A is a public hearing regarding 2020 Village of Wheeling annual budget.
Do I need to read this verbatim? Should I read this verbatim? Does Jim need to read this verbatim?
I have a statement.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's that time of year where the village board must consider and approve an annual budget for the upcoming calendar year, January 1st through December 31st of 2020. Tonight is our annual budget public hearing. Tonight, the public will be allowed to comment on the tentative budget for the 2020 calendar year. Notice of tonight's public hearing was published in the Daily Herald on November 22nd. The tentative budget document has been available for public review since October 16th here at the Village Hall by hard copy at the Indian Trails Public Library and also on the Village website. Additionally, the Village Board discussed the tentative budget at length at its budget workshop on November 2nd of this year. The public is free to make comments tonight concerning the public budget document. The tentative budget will be considered for approval on December 16th at the next Village Board meeting. With that, Mr. President, if you could open the public hearing.
I need a motion to open. I need a motion.
No, you could just open it. I need a motion to close.
I declare the public meeting open. Does anybody have any comments about the budget, questions or comments? Once, twice. There being no questions or comments from the public, I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. Wait, was that a?
He was first, I'll second.
Didn't know if you had something to say. Motion from Trustee Rufato, second from Trustee Lang. Clerk Simpson. Rufato.
Okay.
Lang.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger? Yes. President Horker?
Yes.
Okay, item B.
Yes.
13B, ordinance granting major site plan and appearance approval for a building addition and related site improvements at 222 East Dundee Road, Emerson Group, docket number PC 19-21.
Mr. Robles.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Emerson Group is the new property owner of the subject property at 22 East Dundee, and they're requesting major site plan and appearance approval. The improvements to the building include construction of a new glass entry addition at the customer entry to the building, as well as modernization of the building's exterior facade. The existing brick will be stained to a uniform brownish gray tone. And while the majority of the site will remain unchanged, there will be a new 6-foot tall fence in the rear of a gray composite material, which will also include a new trash enclosure. New landscaping will also be provided not only at the entry and around the base of the building, but also around the landscaped islands, parking lot islands, as well as integrating some new landscaping within the existing McDonald's landscaping adjacent to the property. The item was discussed at the November 21st Plan Commission meeting, where the commission unanimously recommended approval subject to condition that the petitioner work with staff to determine the necessary repairs to the parking lot, which must occur within 9 months from occupancy. The petitioner has noted they are in agreement with that condition, and the ordinance has been prepared to reflect the Plan Commission's recommendation as well as the condition.
Thank you. Trustee Papantos, you have questions? Could we have a representative? Please introduce yourself.
My name is Rob Costello, principal with Torch Architecture, 27 West Jefferson, Naperville, Illinois.
Thank you. Trustee Papantos, you had some questions?
Thank you. I was just interested in the time frame. The building's been there forever, and I like what you're doing to it. I just want to know how long it's going to take before you can move in.
Sure, they closed on the sale this fall. The hope is to start construction in the spring and move in the summer.
Okay, so next summer. So if the parking lot needs work, it would be spring of 21?
Yeah, I think they put the 9 months on. The discussion was if they move in summer, they'll have until the spring to finish it. Their hope is not to stop them moving in. They're moving from a neighboring suburb in a rental office and want to get all their staff relocated here. So the site work doesn't stop them from getting moved in and using the interiors.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, Trustee Rufato?
Did you indicate that the fencing is going to be composite?
Correct.
Normally, don't we go with wood? I'm a bit surprised.
The composite material is has a wood grain material to it, or a consistency to it. As it was presented to the Plan Commission was provided a sample of the material and felt that it was of a quality that was deemed to be acceptable.
See that? I was just curious because, okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Preference of the owner was to have something that was no maintenance.
Yes, understood.
Any other questions or comments? If there are none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion trustee Papantos, second.
Second.
Trustee Rufato? Clerk Simpson, roll call.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes, welcome to the village.
Thank you.
Good luck. See.
Item C, 13C, resolution approving a non-binding team term sheet between the village and Hutton Development for the redevelopment of the property located at 1048 South Milwaukee Avenue, compromising a part of the South 8th to TIF District redevelopment project area of the Village of Wheeling, Cook and Lake Counties, Illinois.
Thank you, Clerk Simpson. Mr. Malanofi, what do we have?
Thank you, President Horker. A resolution is before the village board tonight to approve a non-binding term sheet between the village and Hutton Development for the redevelopment of the property commonly known as the Best Car Site at 1048 South Milwaukee Avenue. It's part of the Southeast 2 TIF District redevelopment project area, and the term sheet sets all the concepts that lay the groundwork for a formal redevelopment agreement that will govern the redevelopment of the site. A TIF application was received by the village's and reviewed by the village's TIF consultant, the lobby companies, and they concluded the TIF request of $1,305,000 is justified based upon a rate of return analysis. As I mentioned, the project is located in our Southeast 2 TIF district, and it is part of our redevelopment project plan objectives. It meets those objectives. The site is located in the northwest corner of Milwaukee Avenue and Sumac Road, and it is Zone B3. The project envisions a demolition of an existing building of 1,300 square feet with replacement and construction with a 3,428 square foot building and a drive-through. Teskin Associates conducted a analysis and they prepared an industrial lane redevelopment plan in 2013, and they actually identified gas stations, restaurants, car rental agencies, and other airport-related uses as the best uses for the industrial lane redevelopment area. The Southeast 2 TIF District was created to fund extraordinary infrastructure improvements, and Hutton Development is required to undertake a variety of these public improvements as per the approved plans by the village. These include Sumac Road improvement to bring the roadway up to industrial standards. It's currently a private roadway. Restriping of Sumac, right turn lane improvements on Sumac, improvements for truck maneuverability, sidewalks, turn lane on Milwaukee Avenue, a deceleration lane on Milwaukee Avenue, and all the turn lane engineering. The public improvements amount to over $470,000. The village will reimburse the developer upon completion of the project with the cash payment of $500,000 upon the issuance of certificate of completion of the entire project, and the village will reimburse the developer for $805,000 payable on an annual basis from the available incremental property taxes only for the additional TIF eligible costs beyond the public improvements. And the payments under this pay-as-you-go reimbursement will commence upon issuance of the certificate of completion of the project. The term sheet's been structured to meet a variety of Wheeling-focused objectives without significant impact on the village budget resources. We're going to improve a blighted area, with new public infrastructure while simultaneously obtaining a new sales tax producing use that provides gasoline, convenience retail, and a coffee shop restaurant for residents and visitors alike. It'll enhance the southern gateway to the village of Wheeling on Milwaukee Avenue, and we anticipate that the project will be a catalyst for additional redevelopment of other properties north of the subject site along Milwaukee Avenue. The TIF district was established to redevelop the industrial lane redevelopment area, and the district resources will fund the project based upon the increment the project actually generates without paying any interest on a TIF note. Economic Development staff recommends approval of the term sheet with Hutton Development to redevelop this blighted site and generate new sales tax revenue to the village. Representatives from Hutton Development are here to answer any questions the village board may have.
Could we have a representative please come up and identify themselves? I would just like to say I like this deal. Thank you. Trustee Papantos, did you have something to say?
And I'm not sure if this is for you or...
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you please identify yourself?
Yes. Ben Carroll with Hutton, the developer for the project.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Mr. Carroll. How long does it typically take between the term sheet, Attorney Ferrillo, and the RDA?
It ranges depending on complexity. This does not appear to be a particularly complex RDA, so probably 30 days. I would think 30 to, right, by the second meeting in January, I think we get this thing wrapped up, hopefully sooner, maybe the first, but this is pretty straightforward.
And then, assuming that it's end of January, how long would it take you to, I mean, it's dead of winter here, and you're Tennessee, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're not quite used to it.
Yeah. No, we plan to close on the property in February and start construction as soon as we can in the spring, say April 1st.
Okay. And can I have examples of what would be TIF-eligible costs that are not public improvements?
Some of the engineering, some of the studies that have been conducted, land acquisition, assemblage of properties and so forth. There's a variety of TIF-eligible expenses, but we actually looked at the extraordinary infrastructure costs in this case.
Do you know how many acres that site is, just out of curiosity?
I want to say it's a little over two
and a half acres.
Yeah, 2.35 or so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Any other questions? If there are no other questions or concerns, we need a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Trustee Lang, second, Trustee Vogel. Roll call, please.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you very much.
D.
Item D.
Yeah.
13D, resolution declaring a tax year 2018 surplus in the Crossroads Tax Increment Financing District Fund and authorizing the distribution of such to the Cook County Treasurer's Office.
Should we read E at the same time?
Please, you'll have to vote separately, but we can
Talk about
cover
it
them
all at
both.
once?
Correct.
Want me to,
E, please.
F2?
Sorry.
I read E. I'm sorry. E, resolution declaring a tax year 2018 surplus in the South Milwaukee Manchester Drive Tax Increment Financing District Fund and authorizing the distribution of such to the Cook County Treasurer's Office.
Thank you. Mr. Monshane, what do we got?
Thank you, Mr. President. The first item, D, is a resolution declaring a surplus in the Crossroads TIF district. This is something that the village board has declared every year since 2005, when the village entered into an intergovernmental agreement with District 214 and 21 to extend the life of the Crossroads TIF district, which was set to expire in 2008. In exchange for their agreement to do that, the village agreed to declare surpluses each year equal to 72% of the annual increment that's generated by the TIF district and 100% for any new buildings that were built after 2005. So this year, the amount in the Crossroads TIF that is surplus is $2,323,421. Of that amount, $324,690 will go to the village's general fund and police and fire pension funds. And the second item, which is item E on the agenda, is similar. It's related to the South Milwaukee TIF district. That's a surplus distribution pursuant to another intergovernmental agreement that the village signed with the overlapping taxing districts a few years ago, whereby the village is required to declare a surplus each year equal to 45% of the annual increment. And that amounts this year to $736,027. And of that amount, $102,857 will be returned to the village's general fund and police and fire pension funds. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just for purposes of explanation, sometimes the TIF funding and finances can be a bit confusing. Could you explain why it is that the money these monies have to be basically, I don't want to say rebated to the county, but basically the village has to surrender them so that we can get a portion back?
Right. We're required by state law, I believe, to distribute that money to the county treasurer's office, which in turn then returns it to each of the taxing districts based on their pro rata share of the tax bill, in essence. So we can't just send that money to the taxing districts directly. It has to be routed through the Cook County Treasurer's Office.
And by the same, because of the same mechanisms, this is money that the village can't use for general fund purposes because it is locked away specifically to be used for TIF purposes.
When it's in the TIF fund, it has to be used for TIF purposes. Once it's declared surplus, it then becomes general fund money, and a smaller portion becomes police and fire pension fund money.
And all the other taxing bodies get their shares as well.
They all get their shares. Attached to your agenda tonight was a spreadsheet that showed the distribution by taxing district. Obviously, the school districts represent the largest part of the tax bill, so they get most of that money.
That's the way it goes. Questions or comments from the board? Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. This is the last year for surplus for the Crossroads TIF because the Crossroads TIF expires in 2019, correct?
That's right. This is the last year we will do the 72% distribution. As we talked about at the budget workshop meeting, though, we are holding back about $500,000 or $600,000 in the fund to make sure that we are able to cover any tax appeals or tax objections that happen from this point forward, which can go on for a number of years. So at some point in the distant future, there will be another distribution of whatever's left in the fund, but tonight is the last distribution related to the intergovernmental agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Any other questions or comments?
Just one
Mr.
comment.
Lane?
So, Michael, the total this year is 2.3 million approximately of a surplus. So with this TIF closed down, what would that reflect on next year on taxes for that area, or for that area?
So that increment or that EAV that has been created by the Crossroads TIF district will now be, in essence, added to the village's total EAV, and that money that the village has been collecting will go back to all of the taxing districts. So in essence, when the village's property tax levy is approved later this month, that money will be captured for the general fund.
And it should reflect a larger share than total amount, 2.3 approximately.
Right, right.
It'll be a larger amount than that, obviously.
Yes.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Lane. Other questions or comments? If there are none, I need separate motions for approval. I would like to do D first, declaring the 2018 surplus on the Crossroads increment. Can I have a motion for the approval?
So moved.
Motion, Trustee Papantos, second.
Second.
Trustee Rufato, roll call, please.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes, and now E, declaring a tax year 2018 surplus on the South Milwaukee Manchester Drive TIF.
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Rufato, motion. Second, Trustee Vogel. Roll call, please.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. Thank you. That's the end of the Crossroads TIF. That's interesting. That's the first one we have that's actually worked its way to maturity, and now everybody gets to reap the benefits. That's
Yes,
excellent.
that was created in 1985. It's the first one to expire. We have another one that'll be expiring in a few years. That's the South Milwaukee TIF. But yes, it's been a successful TIF district.
Excellent. Thank you. Clerk Simpson, F.
13F, ordinance authorizing the Village of Wheeling to borrow funds from the Public Water Supply Loan Program.
That would be Mr. Janik.
Thank you. Public Works is requesting the board approve an ordinance allowing the village to apply for a loan from the IEPA as part of the lead service line replacement project. This request is part of an application process and does not require the expenditure of any monies at this time. What's happening is we need to approve, or the board, we would like the board to approve that we can apply for a loan in order to pay for the lead service line replacement program. Now, in reality, we're not going to be taking a loan out, but in order for us to apply for grant monies, we need to go through a bureaucratic process, and one of the parts of that is to approve this ordinance, as well as some other documentation for us to then apply, and then for the state to respond back to us and let us know how much money we would be granted for this project. So again, as it states, we don't need to spend any money right now. This is just a kind of a pro forma situation where this needs to be approved before we can go on to the next part of the process. We, in effect, won't be taking a loan out. We have money set aside in the 2020 CIP of $2.25 million for the project. As I've told you before, we're expecting approximately $1 million to be granted to us as part of this project. We're hoping for that. Before we go any farther, we'll have to bid this project out. The board will see what the cost of the project is, and you also see how much money that the state is willing to provide us as part of the project, and then we'll go on from there.
So when you say we're expecting about $1 million, that might be money that we might not have to.
That's exactly right.
Questions from the board? No questions? Need a motion for approval then?
So moved. Second.
Motion Trustee Krueger, second Trustee Papantos. Roll call, please.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes. Item G.
13G, ordinance amending Title 19 zoning of the Wheeling Municipal Code to establish zoning regulations for adult cannabis use pursuant to the Illinois Cannabis Regulation in the Tax Act, Village of Wheeling, docket number 2019-24.
Thank you. And forgive me, it's Mr. Robles.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, I mispronounced that.
Okay, thank you, President Horker. The Community Development Department has prepared text amendments to the zoning code in response to the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act that will take effect January 1st of 2020. The act legalizes and regulates the production, consumption, and sale of cannabis in Illinois for residents 21 years and older. Staff introduced the act to the board back in September and received direction in preparing zoning regulations for the Plan Commission. The proposed regulations are based on the various types of licenses that will be issued by the state for cultivation centers, craft growers, infusers, and dispensaries. Each license type will require to obtain a special use in order for the village to review and evaluate each business prior to operation. Additionally, site plan and appearance requirements will also apply if necessary, if there is a need for exterior or site modifications. Currently, zoning permits medical cannabis dispensaries and medical cultivation centers in the industrial zoning districts. The proposed amendments would remove medical dispensaries from the industrial zoning districts and permit cannabis sales in the B2, B3, MXC, and MXT districts. Cultivation centers will remain in the industrial districts, but will no longer be limited to strictly medical cannabis production. Craft growers and infusers would be allowed to co-locate within a dispensary as per the Act, or can operate independently within the I-1 and MXI districts as proposed. While not required by the Act, the draft regulations will require dispensaries to provide reasonable separation from sensitive land uses. As proposed, any cannabis dispensary must not be located within 250 feet from a pre-existing public or private preschool, elementary or secondary school, daycare center, daycare home, group daycare home, summer camp, part-day childcare facility, park, library, public recreation facility, or religious assembly facility. Beyond that, cannabis dispensaries also cannot be located in any area zoned for residential use or public property. Parking requirements for dispensaries, those will be based on retail establishments. And for dispensaries with on-site consumption, the Plan Commission discussed and felt that parking similar to a tavern use would be appropriate. And that has been incorporated into the draft text amendments. At the time of the November 7th public hearing, the Act prohibited the on-site consumption of cannabis within a dispensary. However, there was a trailer bill that recently passed the state Senate, which amends the Act and provides some clarification on a few items. One of those major items that clarified is the Act will now allow for on-site consumption within a dispensary. As a result, the proposed zoning regulations will allow for on-site consumption within a licensed dispensary, again, per the Act. An ordinance has been provided for the board, which is based on the November 7th Plan Commission public hearing and the additional clarifications that were included in the trailer bill by the Senate. And I am available for any questions, if there are any.
Trustee Lang, and then, I'm sorry, Trustee Rufato, and then Trustee Lang.
Thank you, Mr. President. So just in reading this, besides the square footage, is there really any difference between a craft grower and a cultivator?
On the surface, not really. As you mentioned, besides the size, there's a size limitation. The other difference is that a craft grower can be co-located within a dispensary, whereas a cultivation center cannot.
Okay. So then, in essence, within, well, I'm not sure if it was part of the new legislation that was passed just recently. In a building, you can have a dispensary, an infuser, and a craft grower, as long as they're all separate licenses. And I know there's some distinctions as to how the material is handled, but you can have that.
That is correct, yes, and that is per the State Act.
State Act. So we could have a building that could house all three of those, and actually I've seen one of them in another state, and they actually had a production line of infused products in a glass area right across from where the dispensary was. And it was just an interesting concept, and that's what I thought could be interesting from that perspective. And then I believe it was one of the Plan Commission members talked about some of the odor, and I know we can't regulate that in the craft areas, but I'm wondering if there's any type of ordinances we might be able to put around that to maybe restrict those to separate areas. I'm just not sure about that, because dispensaries, you're not going to have that, but when you start combining infusers and probably craft growers, you might get some of that. And the reality is with the ordinance the way it is, I'm not certain how many, if this gets passed, I'm not sure how we're going to, if we're going to have any anyway. But I was just wondering about that piece of it. And then two last items. Probably to understand this. There was no recommendation from the Plan Commission as far as the buffer zone.
Based on the revised discussion from the Plan Commission, that is correct. The result was that there were differences in getting a consensus between 250 and anything greater than that.
Okay, all right. I believe that was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rufato. Trustee Lang and then Trustee Papantos.
Thank you. My comment is just to remind our staff, the Plan Commission, and this board that as we do this, we need to do this safer and better than our neighbors in the surrounding communities. And I think that we should be pushing for top quality locations. We don't want head shops, and I know the state law doesn't really allow for that anymore, but since we're doing this, we could do it better. And that's just my comment to everybody, is that we should be doing it better. As places come in, we should approve them and make sure that they have a higher quality standard. Thank you.
Doing it better than as written, or just doing it, make sure that our
Better than our surrounding
standards.
communities.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry. I just unclear antecedent. Trustee Papantos, then Trustee Vogel.
Thank you. The state law allows for a dispensary to operate between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. We can restrict that further, can we not?
Within that time block, yes, the local municipality can enact further time restrictions.
In all honesty, I think 6 a.m. is a little bit early. So I would recommend something, I don't know, 10 to 10. I think 10 p.m. is fair, but 6 a.m. just seems like I can't see where people are going to stop for whatever and then their cup of coffee on their way to work.
Right.
So I would recommend that we fine-tune that somewhat. As far as the buffer, I honestly don't have that big of a problem with 250 feet. If a facility wanted to be a craft grower and an infuser and a dispensary, what zoning are we recommending for that combination?
So it would default to the dispensary, because at the end of the day, the dispensary is the point of sale license for the cannabis. So that would be B2, B3, the MXC, mixed-use commercial, and mixed-use transit.
If it's just a craft grower, what?
Craft grower would be limited to the I-1 or the MXI industrial districts.
And I guess that's where I'm confused. I can see the grower being in an industrial area, but once you combine it with the dispensary, they're allowed to be more in a commercial area, and I'm not
Correct.
sure about that, although I don't know how many of those facilities will actually come to town.
The understanding is that the craft grower and infuser element of a dispensary would be on a smaller scale. It wouldn't be the primary operation or production of the dispensary. And so, again, defaulting to the primary function of the dispensary is to encourage them within our general commercial areas where the buildings are more appropriately designed and accustomed to handle retail traffic, and as well as being more visible to public safety elements as well. So rather than burying them within the industrial areas, and that's why staff recommended that the dispensaries, any element of the dispensary be within our retail zoned areas.
And I did have some questions about the parking. I believe at the Plan Commission there was a recommendation that a lounge would be the same as a tavern. I don't think it's going to be, I think we're comparing apples and oranges as far as a tavern and a lounge. I don't know if we would need that much parking. I don't want to have a building that's all parking lot and for no reason other than that.
Sure.
And then I just want to clarify, any use would be a special use, so there would be another hearing before somebody. They couldn't just open up like, oh, there's a new shop in town and.
That's correct, and that's why staff didn't propose any further restriction on the hours. We felt that that would be assessed during the specific special review of that given operator, and that time to determine what their hours are and whether or not, based on their location and their type of business, what their hours would be. But per your suggestion, the ordinance can be amended to include a defined time limit for dispensaries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Just one moment, Trustee Vogel. So, but realistically, the question of an industrial use like the craft grower or the infuser, that would be very similar to the Ram Brewery, where they did actually do the brewing on site, but it was predominantly a commercial enterprise, or the Wheeling Donut, where they do produce the donuts on site, but it is in fact a commercial enterprise. Are those fair similarities?
That is correct. That would be a fair statement.
Yeah, just so it's clear in my head. Trustee Vogel.
Yeah, the 250-foot buffer, we have a buffer of 1,000 feet for liquor, I believe, of all types. Why would we go to 250 feet for this, where there's a statement being made here that says that the dispensaries may offer a very limited number of products that contain alcohol? Are we going against our 1,000-foot ordinance?
No, the state law, you have a restriction relating to liquor and their location, and a liquor establishment's location to a school or various sensitive areas. That's by state law. State law relative to cannabis is very specific. You do not have to have any buffering relative to cannabis. This is up to the local municipality in its entirety. You could have a zero buffer, 250 feet, you can go up to 1,500 feet. The state law regarding liquor is a different animal.
But if the dispensaries may offer products that contain alcohol?
No, they can't. They can only offer products that contain alcohol on a very, very limited basis. It's not like selling a drink. It doesn't require a liquor license per se. It's a very, very minor amount of liquor that can be available in a particular product. I'll get you the amount, the exact amount, but it's not a liquor license holder. A dispensary cannot hold a liquor license.
Just a second, Trustee.
Okay. I guess whether they hold a liquor license or not, there's alcohol in it, and it just seems contradictory that in one case you can't sell liquor or alcoholic products within 1,000 feet of these establishments, but yet you can put it in.
It's not the same thing, Trustee Vogel. You don't need a liquor license. It's clearly not liquor as the State Liquor Control Act considers liquor. You do not need a license to sell it.
Scotch is scotch is scotch.
No, it's not. It's not.
Would that be the same as the amount of alcohol in mouthwash or
Yeah,
syrup?
it's a very small
amount.
Correct.
Right. Okay. I'm still leery about the 100 or 250 feet. There was a statement made earlier when we discussed this back a month or so ago that with the 250-foot buffer and the 1,500 feet between dispensary organizations, that we're going to have limited numbers that were going to be available because of those two limitations. Do we know how many, based on those two limitations, the maximum that we could do in the village?
We never did a calculation based on, just the geographic boundaries of the community, because there's honestly too many options. What we do know right now is that we only have interest from one party that has moved beyond just discussion. So based on that, it is occupying most of the eastern border of our community. So right off the bat, you're knocking off a significant, just with one dispensary, you're knocking off a significant chunk of our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Vogel. Any other questions or comments? Because we do need some clarification at this point. And I'm going to be polling the board then. I'll start with the hours. Trustee Papantos, you brought up a question about the hours. It was pointed out that these state-established standards are 6 a.m. till 10 p.m.?
That is the range of hours that I think you can operate in. I agree with Mr. Robles, that you can regulate within that range of hours.
And then during the special use, because all of these uses are going to be special uses, it's not just, oh, you comply, you can do it. Everybody is going to have to come in for a special use approval. At that point, it's a choke point for us to say, no, this area, you can't be open at 6 in the morning selling buds.
As part of, right, as part of the special use analysis would be hours of operation, number of staff, things of that nature that we would typically ask of a proposed business. And with that, you know, the Plan Commission as well as the Village Board's assessment would be whether their hours are appropriate for their location and operation.
So given this measure of control, I'm just going to ask, does anybody want to further introduce limits into the ordinance at this point? Trustee Rufato?
No.
Trustee Kruger?
No.
Trustee Lang?
No.
Trustee Vito?
No.
Papantos?
Yes.
Yes. Trustee Vogel? No. He's shaking his head. I speak English, and I'm a no as well. So we're just going to let that ride. We have the parking issue also. The parking was Trustee Papantos, you brought that up. You weren't sure about tying it to the industrial standard, or the commercial standards. Was that the?
Tavern standards.
Tavern standards. Mr. Robles, the logic in using this as a standard, please remind us?
Yes, during the Plan Commission's discussion, it was brought up at the time of a potential offshoot of a cannabis cafe. That was prior to the trailer bill that clarified the on-site consumption. But during that discussion, the Plan Commission felt that similar to a tavern where you'd have customers going to an establishment and staying there for a few hours rather than going and purchasing and then leaving, that the parking should reflect that rather than that of a retail use. And the tavern parking ratio of 1 space per 3 seats plus 1 space per employee was suggested, and the Plan Commission concurred with that.
So, given the reasoning, do you wish to open for discussion the issue of the parking standards? Trustee Vogel?
No.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
No.
Trustee Lang?
No.
Trustee Kruger?
No.
Trustee Rufato?
No.
So that stays as is. And that brings us to the 250-foot buffer. In the back of the document that we received, there were maps with overlays of how the buffers would be affected just with the existing limits as established by state code relative to public area, schools, public buildings, et cetera. The code as drafted recommends a 250-foot buffer zone. Should we open this for further discussion is the question. Or should we go with the code as outlined? Trustee Lang.
250 is fine.
Trustee Vito.
250 is fine.
Trustee Kruger.
I'm okay with 250.
Thank you. Trustee Papantos.
250.
Trustee Rufato.
500.
Thank you. Trustee Vogel.
500.
I am also 250, and so the 250 will stay. Are there any other concerns or issues from the electorate? Or Mr. Rufato?
Just for clarification, Trustee Vogel, I pulled up our liquor code, and no license shall be issued for the sale at retail of any alcoholic liquor within 100 feet of any church, school, or institution of higher learning. So it's 100 feet.
100.
Not 1,000.
Thank you, Mr. Frola. Any other concerns or comments from the board?
Just one more comment about,
Trustee Rufato.
and I'm not, based upon what I'm hearing right now, I'd probably get a no anyway, about craft growers, not allowing craft growers to coexist with dispensaries. Make them purely industrial, because as Trustee Papantos pointed out, you're then taking industrial use and putting it into this business use. And I know you indicated it's like the Ram Brewery or whatever, but is that something that should be considered? my only comment.
So you're proposing the possibility of removing any craft grower potential from the commercial enterprise of the dispensary?
Yes.
So I would take it you're a yes.
Yeah, I'd be a yes.
Trustee Kruger, how do you feel about that? Remove it?
I think it makes sense to not put an industrial use. I don't know how they make it or what they're going to grow, so I don't know what the process is to know how invasive it could be in a B3 district.
Give, Mr. Ferrolo, the state outlines security measures and as far as invasive into the property, from what I've seen, I know you guys went to a place and saw what they were doing. I have never seen a place that has dirt.
Yeah, the state handles the licensing, and the state will come out and look at the setup of the facility. We're going to have very little control over the licensing process, the sale, the production, et cetera. Regarding odors, to the extent it becomes a nuisance, I think we can take a look at that if that were to happen. But if a craft grower is complying with state-based regulations, which are going to deal with the type of machinery they use, the type of process they use, we're preempted. Okay, so it's going to have to turn into a real problem. But I think you've got a remedy if it gets out of control. It's probably going to be pretty limited that you're going to get a unit that has multiple licenses in one. So we may be, overthinking it at this point.
Over-regulating?
Right.
And we have
Exactly.
the special use process to really take a deep dive into it. And
We do, but if we say that it's allowed in this district, then our hands are sort of tied. But if we say that a craft grower can only go in industrial, special use in industrial, then it loosens it a little bit. That's my only comment.
What you may be doing at the same time is limiting a business, a business plan that may want to come in here with a craft grower and a dispensary that may be a successful operation that will generate significant sales tax.
Right.
So you could be limiting opportunities without really knowing why you're doing it at this point.
But I always say it's tougher to go back to retrofit something, but it's easier to say, okay, we will allow these together instead of in the future having to pull them apart.
I think you can zone it. I think you can definitely zone for a craft grower.
then we'll leave it the way it's proposed, for me.
So I do need to make a clarification from something I said earlier. I have seen dirt with industrial fiber hemp. They're not as clean.
Fair enough.
Okay. So at this point, as far as separating a craft grower from a residential, Mr. Rafato, you are a yes to the separation?
I am.
And Trustee Kruger, you are?
No.
No separation. Trustee Lang?
Yeah, I'm no, and I believe that the craft part of it is a very small part of the total operation. And just to say, I have been into one of the largest dispensaries in the country, and for smell, there was no smell at all in that store, outside the parking lot. The only smell there was when the security guards took us around for a tour, and we went into the area where the actual product was being processed, and there was a huge smell. That was it. So, sorry for that.
No problem.
No.
I just want to make sure everybody has their chance on this because it's kind of a big deal. Trustee Vito, separate or leave it as is?
Leave it as is.
Trustee Papantos?
Leave as is.
Trustee Vogel?
Leave it.
Okay, so then basically the code is going through as written.
Correct.
All right. So now that we've hammered all that out, I do need a motion to approve the code as written.
So moved.
Motion, Trustee Kruger, second.
Second.
Trustee Lang. Roll call.
Trustee Lang?
Yes.
Trustee Vito?
Yes.
Trustee Rufato?
Yes.
Trustee Vogel?
Yes.
Trustee Papantos?
Yes.
Trustee Krueger?
Yes.
President Horker?
Yes.
Item 13H, presentation airport layout plan for Chicago Executive Airport.
Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly.
Jamie.
Jamie. I'm sorry. Mr. Abbott.
Good evening, President Horker and Board of Trustees. Thank you for Manager Svanvillis for putting us on the agenda tonight. Before we get started, if I can make a few comments kind of off topic here. I want to extend our appreciation and thank you to the Village of Wheeling for the reconstruction of Industrial Drive. I know that wasn't done because the airport offices are at the end, but I have to tell you that the approach to the office now is really nice. They did a really good job. So thank you very much. That's the preferred route into the office now. So I just wanted to say thank you from the staff and the board for that reconstruction of that road. So thank you very much. All right, so now for the kind of the reason we're here tonight, let me give you a kind of a big picture view and kind of set the stage of why we're in front of you tonight. We're not here for an approval of the ALP. We're here mainly to give you some information. And the information is very similar to almost exactly what you saw at the joint meeting if you joined us a few months ago. So this is kind of the end of the master plan process. I'm going to try not to steal kind of Craig Loudon's presentation here that he's going to give to you, but this is kind of the culmination of the years of work we've been doing with the master plan. It all ends with an updated ALP. So I won't steal Craig's presentation, but we're going to come back to you the beginning of the year, probably January, February, maybe March, with the official ALP for approval and your review. It's a very technical document. You'll really probably only be concerned with the cover page or the map, which you'll see tonight. The rest of it is another 50, 60 pages of very technical information that you're welcome to review and ask us questions about that. So we'll come back to you when we have all of those documents. Those are being created right now, and we'll come back to you in a couple months for that official approval. We went in front of the City of Prospect Heights a few weeks ago with this exact same presentation and information, and we're here before you tonight. So I want to invite Craig Loudon up. He's with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly. He's the consultant team. He's the lead on the project that's been working on the master plan and the updated ALP, and we'll run through this information and answer any questions that you may have. So, Craig?
Thank you all very much. As Jamie mentioned, I'm Craig Loudon with Crawford, Murphy, and Tilly. I'm the project manager on the master plan project. Before I start, do you guys all have a copy of the slides? Was that included in the packet? And then also the airport layout plan sheets themselves, was that included as well? If you don't have them, I have some clean 11 by 17 copies here that I can leave. I also have two 32 by 40 boards that I will also leave for your review and use as we go forward. So again, thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'll try to get out of here pretty quickly. Where I wanted to start, do I click the button here, John? Just yes. All right, I'm gonna screw this up, so just bear with me. All right. Where I wanted to start was just an overall brief project status of where we're at. In terms of completed work items, we've selected what we call the preferred development concept. It's essentially the future development plan that's going to be shown in the master plan report and also on the airport layout plan itself. We've also completed a pretty large-scale public involvement process. The last meeting was on July 11th, 2019, and then we followed that up with the joint meeting in September, in addition to some of the work that we had done in 2018 and early 2019 as well. So right now, we're kind of in production mode in terms of ongoing work items. We're working on what we call the CIP, or the Capital Improvement Program, that essentially slots these projects in year after year to show how the various development would occur over time. We're also working on the airport layout plan itself and what we call the AGIS. It's the acronym that you see in the slides, which stands for Airport Geographic Information System. That's an FAA required deliverable as part of the project. And then lastly, we're in the process of compiling and composing the master plan report itself. So to give you a brief overview of kind of the development highlights that we're showing on the ALP is, first and foremost, all of the development is taking place inside of what we call the 4 roadway boundaries. So that's Hintz Road on the north, Wolf Road on the west, Main Line Palatine Road on the south, and Milwaukee Avenue on the east. There is no development that is going sort of beyond those 4 roadway borders. We understand that was the direction of the 2 communities previously, and we've maintained that in the development plan. The development that we're showing in the airport layout plan is identical to what was presented in July at the open house, and also that was presented in September at the joint meeting. We have not changed any of that. What you will see in the airport layout plan is what is consistent with what you've seen over the last few months from us. The development plan does include the closure of runway 624, and in terms of the total development area that we're proposing, we're showing about 1 million square feet of new hangar buildings being required over the 20-year lifespan of the master plan. Just a little bit more than half of that square footage is located in the village of Wheeling. The remainder is in the city of Prospect Heights. Total development, that includes airfield pavement, parking lots, stormwater detention, et cetera. We're right around 2 million square feet of total development in the plan. And then, as I mentioned, we're leaving a significant amount of space for stormwater management. So that's floodplain, compensatory storage, and stormwater detention. The airport is located next to the Des Plaines River, so the handling of stormwater is a really big deal in terms of development at the airport, and we're making sure that there's proper space allocated for that to allow the airport to develop unencumbered going forward. So this is a graphic of the existing airport layout drawing. So this is one of the boards that I'll be leaving with you. I apologize here, north is to the left. I'm a good engineer and I like it when north is up, but in this case, the configuration of the airport doesn't really lend itself to north being up. So bear with me with north being to the left. So this is just a snapshot of the existing condition of the airport. It's very similar to what you would see on Google Earth or Google Maps or something like that. The next slide is the future airport layout drawing. This shows all of the development that is being proposed over the 20-year term of the master plan. Again, north is to the left, and it shows the comprehensive development proposal that was shown at the public meeting and also at the joint meeting in September. So in terms of next steps, I think, Jamie spoke to this a little bit. The intergovernmental agreement that governs the airport between the village of Wheeling and the city of Prospect Heights indicates that the 2 municipalities must approve the airport layout plan upon the completion of the project. So as Jamie mentioned, we're anticipating to be back in front of you in a couple of months, once you've had a chance to review the information that's been provided for a formal approval resolution on this project. So that, again, that'll be in a couple of months. The other things that CMT and the airport will be doing over the next couple of months is we will be submitting a laundry list of deliverables to the Illinois Division of Aeronautics and the FAA for review and approval. They will get the airport layout plan, the master plan report, and the airport GIS database that we're developing. And we anticipate all of this will be wrapped up in the first quarter of 2020. So with that, that concludes the formal part of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the project.
Mr. Loudon, a couple people have expressed concerns over the potential closure of 624. I am not a pilot. I don't understand avionics. I'm not going to get in the cockpit of a plane and fly, but I do have to say the reasoning sounds sound about having a runway that you can use when there are winds that are not cooperating with your north-south flow. You also say that you cannot submit these plans without our approval? They require our approval?
Yes, per the intergovernmental agreement, they require municipal approval of both the city of Prospect Heights and the village of Wheeling before the project can be completed.
So justify closing 624,
Sure. If I could.
safety-wise.
Okay. So one of the primary reason that runway 624 is being closed has to do with airfield safety. Right now, the FAA has indicated that this location on the airfield is what is known in FAA speak as called a hotspot. That is, the way FAA defines a hotspot is that is a location on the airfield that is confusing or can cause what FAA calls a loss of situational awareness that can lead to a runway incursion. A runway incursion is where an aircraft enters the runway environment mistakenly or without clearance from the FAA air traffic control tower. And so FAA has gone around the country and they have analyzed airfields of all sizes, and they have shown that they've depicted hotspots on airport layout diagrams around the country. And so at Chicago Executive, this location right here, it's where 3 runways come together along with multiple taxiways. They've called that a hotspot, and all of their guidance recommend some sort of mitigation of what they call non-standard geometry. So as CMT looked at this intersection as part of the master plan, it was our recommendation that the airport was going to be unable to fully improve this intersection of the airfield without removing one of the runways that sort of make this triple runway intersection on the airfield. So when combined with the operational airfield safety, the runway in 2016 was used by less than 2% of all airfield operations. So while I understand the need for crosswind or downwind landing, it was used by less than 2% of all the total takeoffs and landings. And then lastly, as part of the overall development plan, we're projecting nearly 90 new based aircraft will be coming to this airport over the next 20 years. From when we first started this project, the based aircraft count at the airport is up already since that time, and frankly, filling up the entire 4 roadway boundary area will barely accommodate the full projected increase in based aircraft. So land is at a premium at this airport, and you combine that with operational statistics and the overall airfield geometry, that's where we
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the money port right now. I am more concerned about the safety. So less than 2% have used this. How many, why was what was the use on the other, you've got the main runway, you've got this 64, and then you've got the other diagonal. And I'm sorry if I capitalize on this, but I will recognize everybody. So why wasn't, I can't enlarge that, and my drawings are too tiny. The other.
Sure. The larger runway is runway 1634. That's the north-south runway, and 1230 is the.
Finding the computer.
The more northwest-southeast runway.
Why wasn't the other one recommended for closing?
It is used more, and Jamie, I'll defer to you. I don't have the exact statistics in front of me for what the breakdown of the full utilization of all 3 runways are.
2130, I guess it is.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here just to give you a little more information about why we chose 624 and not 1230. 1230 is a little longer, it's wider, it's just been resurfaced. There's another kind of set of lists of why 624, other than the crosswind component of the piston aircraft that would use it if the winds are coming down that runway. FAA does not participate in the funding of rehabbing and maintaining 3rd runways at GA airports. So if that runway would require maintenance or a resurface, that's totally on the airport's responsibility to do that.
there's not a whole lot of capital projects that the airport can fund themselves. We just resurfaced 1230 at a tune of, so about a $2 million project, $2.4 million. That was only 5% airport dollars, and so that project would not be possible for us if it wasn't for FAA and state participation. And so third runways at airports are not eligible for those for that kind of participation. 1230 is more attractive because there's not the displaced threshold like 624 has, specifically runway 24. You can't see it on the map, but the forest preserve trees in Milwaukee Avenue cause an obstruction to that landing on that runway, and the displacement is about 1,000 feet. So there's about 1,000 feet that's unusable for landing on that runway. So that's another consideration. It was really a holistic approach with the master plan process of why we are recommending the closure of 624. The next step in that process,
How long is 624 if there's 1,000 feet that can't be used?
The total length. The rest of it's usable is about 2,800 or so. So, yep, sorry, I should have that in front of me.
It says 3677 on the sheet.
Yep, that's about right, total. So you displace that. Now, it's all available for takeoffs, but just not landing to the west. We've approached the Forest Preserve District about taking down some trees, and that wasn't.
County's not big on that.
Yeah.
You mentioned there was some sort of mitigation had to occur. Does that mean there's other sort of mitigations that were considered that are available? Some sort of mitigation had to occur to relieve this hot spot.
Sure. Yeah, typically what FAA recommends for mitigating hotspots is they will allow improvements to signage, lighting, and marking. But unfortunately, the airport has already gone through that process, and it has enhanced the signage, lighting, and marking of this intersection to the greatest degree possible. And it did not, unfortunately, remove the hotspot from FAA's diagram.
The FAA still doesn't see that. Thank you for answering my questions. There are other people with questions. Trustee Papantos?
Thank you. So as long as we're on that topic, is 1230 a viable alternative to 624?
In terms of closure or
in terms of crosswinds and usage?
Yes, it serves as I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yes, it does provide some crosswind component to runway 1634.
And will the airport layout plan include the widening of 1230 that has been discussed to, I believe, 100 feet?
Yes, it's shown on the future ALD that you have in front of you.
And you mentioned on the roadways, you were very specific to say mainline Palatine Road.
I was.
And I kind of grimaced because I don't think mainline Palatine Road is of much use if we lose the frontage. Is that what you're speaking of?
Sure. So if you look on the drawing, we are showing a relocation of the Palatine frontage road. This proposed development concept where where the Palatine frontage road is relocated has been on the books since the first airport layout plan done in the 1980s. We've just continued that planning. It was done in the 80s, and it was done also in the 2006 airport layout plan. The end of runway 30 here is a little bit constrained by the frontage road and some of the development between the frontage road and mainline Palatine Road. So the historic thought that has been applied here is that by relocating the frontage road and potentially acquiring some of that land for airport use, we can enhance the utility of runway 1230 in the future.
Where would you relocate it to? I'm having a hard time picturing that in my head. I mean,
What's the pub there?
Milwaukee and Palatine and the whole intersection there's not a whole lot of space.
Yeah, so we're not.
I'm assuming going south.
Right, so what we're proposing to do is we're keeping it at where the existing frontage road intersects Milwaukee Avenue. That is going to stay, and then after a small straightaway, the road would be bent to the south to kind of approach the frontage road and parallel the frontage road before returning to its original alignment a little bit further to the west.
what are the chances of the state even halfway approving that?
It's a great question. It can be done with retaining walls and things like that. I mean, it's not impossible, but it's understood that that's a long-term planning item for the airport.
And that would take out how many businesses?
I'm trying to think of what's there, probably 3 or 4. I think it saves the McDonald's and the businesses to the south. I think it's after that. So there would be several that would have to be relocated probably.
Did Prospect Heights mention anything about this, or?
No, they didn't.
They didn't blow up the map well enough. Earlier tonight, we approved a term sheet for a new development, a gas station, and I believe it would be sitting in a retention basement right now.
Right.
You know, I'll be honest with you, I'm not giving up that kind of development. You know, this is what we have asked for in our town for many years, to start developing Milwaukee Avenue and to put a hangar in, or a use that I don't know what the tax revenue would be. I would be very hard pressed. I also can't see Waste Management packing up and leaving.
Oh, they're still there.
Are they still on this?
Are they still there?
No, in the long term, the thought is that Waste Management could be.
Aren't they there in this picture?
Part of them are, but I think a lot of the development that would be located between the roadway that you see and some of the hangars in the airfield would likely be used for stormwater management. So the assumption here is that Waste Management would be relocated as part of this. And, you know, Mary, to address the gas station, our approach to this project was to look at it from the airport's perspective. There's a forecast that's been approved by the FAA that indicates there is, you know, going to be a certain amount of growth. And so our task was to try to accommodate that growth within the footprint of the 4 roadways. So we set about, you know, developing this plan to do that. If the direction, you know, comes from, you know, either the Village of Wheeling or the City of Prospect Heights to do something different, then we're happy to accommodate that. But the concept that you see before you here on the screen just barely accommodates the development. So any sort of scaling back of that, whether because of the Palatine Frontage Road, because of development along Milwaukee Avenue, it's going to potentially constrain the airport's total development area going forward. But if that's the decision, then you know, we're okay with it.
Right, and I can't justify scaring a developer away. And I think if we said, this is great, go for it, the developer may say, don't bother with the going forward. And I don't think I know that's not what I want.
Sure. And if I could jump in here, Trustee Papantos, this is really a 20-year plan, and AOP is a plan. So if things develop as we're getting this approved and things change, updates to the AOP are made or can be made. So if the gas station were to go in, this gets adjusted to.
And I'm pretty sure that business is going well beyond 20 years. I mean, you don't build and put that type of investment in for a 20-year business that's a 50 to 100. Well, I don't know if we'll be using gas in 50 years, but, you know, maybe they can, you know, be a charging station or whatever.
Sure.
Little launch pad for our
flying cars.
Flying cars.
Well, yeah, we're talking about that as well. And again, this being a planning document, it's required by the FAA. And the reason is, and this is all demand driven. So it's not you approve an AOP and then we start building all of these brand new orange boxes and taxiways and so forth. This is all driven by demand. If you take a look at the original AOP, we're just now really accomplishing most of the things on the AOP that was developed over 20 years ago. So this is not a build it and they will come situation. This is a planning document, and it makes the airport eligible for federal and state funds should we have to put in a taxiway anywhere that's on the ALP. So it's not this corner's first and this corner's second. This is all really driven by the demand that we see in the forecasting that we've done in the master plan.
And this plan also takes up theoretically all of Industrial Lane, correct?
Correct.
So,
If someday it were built out, yep.
right,
that's questions.
and I'm just, tax-wise, what does that do to the Village of Wheeling as far as property tax when it's airport use for hangars?
Sure. Most of the existing corporate hangars, and I say corporate hangar, anything larger than a T hangar, they pay property taxes, and they're I've seen some of their bills, and they're pretty significant. So I would say the majority, if not all, of the brand new orange boxes on the future ALP, those would be entities that would be paying property taxes just like any other business in the village or the city. Yep.
One of the boards that we presented at the public meeting in July, the concept that you see in front of you would generate about $2 million in property taxes. So all told, assuming right now on an estimate is about $2 of property tax per square foot, give or take, is what's currently at the airport. So if you look at the proposed 1 million square foot of additional hangars over the 20 years, you're looking at about $2 million of property taxes generated by the development you see here. And that's in addition to about $4 million of airport rent revenue that would be coming to the airport, give or take about $4 per square foot on that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Trustee Papantos. Trustee Lang, you had some questions?
Yes, more of a statement. 20 years as a plan commissioner a few years back. This is more than, no more than a comprehensive plan that the village has performed in 2003. And if you notice our comprehensive plan in Wheeling, some properties along Wolf Road, some housing and so on, has just now, back from that 2003 plan, come into change because the situation's changed. And Panettone Development is building that spec warehouse there. So it is a comprehensive plan. This plan that you're showing us is if the situation comes to be down the road, we have a plan of what we would like there. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be there. You've also been asked, too, that if any businesses have been displaced, especially in Wheeling, anything along Industrial Drive or even in Prospect Heights, that we work with you work with the directors of community development in either town to help relocate those businesses should they move, should the need come up where they need to move, correct?
Correct. And any sort of business relocation that would come from airport expansion is governed by federal law, a federal law called the Uniform Act, which requires not only fair market value for the acquisition, but also the airport to cover relocation costs as well.
So, and the gas station that was approved for TIF money tonight, there's no way that the airport would stand in their way to be developed, correct?
No,
there's no need for that property.
There's no need for it right now.
Yeah.
No, and to add to that, Ray, the proposed gas station is also located at the corner of what land we're proposing for stormwater detention. The stormwater detention calculation is very, very high level. I mean, we are at a very, high level planning estimate of stormwater detention. So carving out a corner of that facility for the gas station development will likely have minimal impact on the overall stormwater scheme of the airport. So we can easily accommodate that within the framework of what you see here.
Okay. And switching gears to 624, so that's not just an immediate, the airport is saying that, yes, we'd like to see it closed, but it's not an immediate, let's close it tomorrow. It is a process. Can you go over that process with how long it takes and what is accommodated there? You got several folks here who are really concerned about the closure of that, and are their voices going to be heard? And, does that go into the final decision?
Sure, and I'll let Craig jump in here because that's kind of a technical process that I think he's been involved with. But there's an environmental process to closing a runway at an airport.
And that's, it's pretty extensive, and Craig, you want to get into the details of that, but you're right, it's not a approve the ALP and we go out tomorrow and we take out the striping and the lights and the runway is closed. It doesn't happen that way. There's an environmental process which includes public involvement and so forth, but Craig, what am I missing here?
Sure. So in order to fully close 624, the first thing that has to happen is the airport layout plan and the master plan need to be approved by the FAA. The review time for those documents, will extend into most of 2020. Then after that, as Jamie mentioned, there is what's called an environmental assessment, which satisfies the conditions of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, as it's referred to in FAA speak. And that process can take up to a year, and we'll have a formal public hearing as part of it, so public involvement is considered through the environmental process. So once the...
Define environmental. You talking about the potential contaminants in the ground? Are you talking about the socioeconomical environment? Are you talking about what environmental impact?
Sure. So the FAA environmental process is very comprehensive. You're looking at noise, you're looking at air quality, you're looking at stormwater, you're looking at cultural and historic preservation, you're looking at biotic resources. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones that I'm not getting off the top of my head, but all of those things will be looked at through the environmental process. Now, for a runway closure on essentially previously disturbed ground, you're primarily going to be looking at noise and air quality are going to be the two that are going to be of most interest to the FAA.
Where does the cost-benefit analysis take place as far as safety and profit?
In terms of closing a pavement, FAA does not dictate to the airport that they need to justify that from a cost-benefit perspective.
No, my cost-benefit analysis is dollars per body.
That is not done as part of this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
You're good?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, so it is a process. There's a lot more to it than just Mayor Daley this parking or this runway.
Yes, and then there is, after the environmental is approved, then there's also design and construction that would have to take place. So you're a few years out at the minimum from that runway.
So several years.
Yeah, I would say best case scenario, probably 2 to 3, and then it could go longer than that.
Okay, and just for the folks here, their voices will be heard in a public hearing on this topic as well, and they will be able to voice their concerns, their needs for this runway as well. So in fairness, we'll hear both sides of the story to it.
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I would also add, Ray, that was one of the reasons for some of the public involvement process all along in the master plan, was also to seek feedback as well through that process.
Okay. Thank you.
Is 624 the oldest of the runways?
Maybe, yeah. There used to be a parallel to 624, so that there used to be 2 runways that parallel each other. I think taxiway Alpha used to be a runway as well. So at one point, I think the airport had 6 runways. So
I don't know. I'm sorry.
It may have been 6, but there were no jets.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, my left. So this is a discussion issue. This is not, no votes, no. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
And we will leave the copies of all of this just right up here for your use after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Clerk Simpson, we are at the official communications portion of our evening. You have something?
Yes, the property tax appeals session for Wheeling Township will be held at the Village Hall. The property tax appeals seminar will be held on Tuesday, December 10th, 2019, at this building at 6:00 p.m. And Cook County Board of Review Commissioner Dan Patlack will present it, and That's about it.
What was the date?
And it's December 10th, Tuesday, December 10th at 6 p.m. And it's the Wheeling Township is open for appeal December 2nd through December 31st, 2019, for you to appeal your taxes. And the other thing is, this coming Saturday, Lollipop Lane starts. It'll run this Saturday through December 15th. Saturday and Sunday is 2 to 5. Monday through Friday is 6 to 8.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the? That's it. Trustee Lang.
As Sherry mentioned before, I just want to say thank you again to Ashley and Greg Latecki and their staff for opening up Spears on Thanksgiving. She said fifth year in a row. It was a tremendous event. It's great to help out families in need there, and hats off to Spears for taking time out of their own day. The folks, their restaurant was closed that day, but their staff took time out of their own day, and I don't believe they were paid at all, and they donated their time for the folks, and it was very nice.
Thank you, Trustee Lang. You have before you the bills for November 14th through the 27th. I didn't cut anybody off, did I? 2019. I need a motion for their approval.
So moved.
Motion, Trustee Papantos.
Second.
Second, Trustee Rufato. Roll call, please.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
Trustee Rufato,
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos.
Yes.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes, we do have an executive session this evening. It is for the purposes of appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or employees of the village. I need a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
Motion, Trustee Kruger, second.
Second.
Trustee Papantos, roll call, please.
Trustee Lang,
Yes.
Trustee Vito,
Yes.
Trustee Rufato.
Yes.
Trustee Vogel,
Yes.
Trustee Papantos.
Yes.
Trustee Kruger,
Yes.
President Horker.
Yes, that is recess. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. You don't have to leave, but I wouldn't stay. Yeah. Whatever.